Welcome, everyone, to this regular meeting of the South Kingstown Town Council. It is Monday, January 26th. The time is 7:30 p.m. Our first order of business, as always, is to pledge to the flag. Please rise and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Council President Collins.
Here.
Council Vice President Healy.
Here.
Councilwoman Clow.
Here.
Councilwoman Gledhill.
Here.
Councilman Veely.
Here.
All members present.
Thank you. Item 4 on our agenda tonight is the approval of minutes of previous meetings.
I make a motion to approve item 4, both A and B, the work sessions of January 5th and the regular session of January 11th.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And that motion carries unanimously. Item 5 on our agenda is the consent agenda.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented in tonight's package.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And that motion carries unanimously. And that brings us to item 7 tonight, which is a public hearing. This public hearing is relative to the adoption of the proposed FY 2016-2017 to FY 2021-2022 capital improvement program as shown on Exhibit 1 attached to your agendas. Steve, why don't you give us some background here?
Tonight's public hearing is the completion of the capital improvement program process as required under the town ordinance. The council has conducted 3 public informational sessions over the course of the month of January. We've spent approximately 10 hours, and I'm going to now take the same 10 hours to advise you of everything I said in the first 10 hours. What I think is important is for us to look at the exhibit, and we can walk through that. And that way, if there's specific questions on any of the items, we can address them. Exhibit 1 shows the 16-17 through 21-22 capital improvement program. The capital improvement program is really divided into 2 separate sections. One is the identification of the 2016-17 capital budget. The capital budget is the first year of the capital improvement program and looks at specific funding amounts that would be incorporated into the general fund of the town. The items that are listed 1 through 16, each of those items contains multiple components, such as the park rehabilitation and improvements for $125,000 assumes 9 projects. I can walk through each of them, or if there's specific questions that council or the public may have, I can provide specific information. I'll just read through them. If there's a question, we'll stop and go through it at that point. If there's no questions on park rehab and improvements, we'll move to the recreation equipment. There's 6 pieces of equipment that are scheduled for purchase and replacement items in the 2016-17 year. On the road improvement program, has a first-year general fund contribution to the road improvement program fund of $650,000. That $650,000 addresses a number of different items: road improvements, bridge improvements, drainage improvements, and it also would deal with management of DEM's total maximum daily allowances as far as drainage improvements that are necessary or sidewalk improvements. There are no sidewalk improvements that are planned for the 2016-17 year. Most of the monies that are going forward would be in road reconstruction. The items that are listed within that item are presented within the capital budget with its own schedule, and that schedule calls for a combination of full reconstruction and overlay projects. The projects that are listed is the Matunic Beach Road is a arterial road for overlay at $282,000, and Moonstone Beach, which is a reconstruction, and that's the portion between Route 1 and the Post Road for $286,002. We're also looking at overlays on Charles Street and Cherry Lane. The overlay will also include Barbers Pond Road from Route 2 to Route 2, the entire loop. Those are the improvements that would be made that are road-related. We would also have $20,000 is set aside for Matunic Beach Road protection and preservation. This is the monies that are required on a yearly basis for maintenance of a constructed seawall. Those monies would be held in reserve. They would be spent on an as-need basis. We're also looking at $50,000 on the Saugatucket Road culvert, where we would be looking at doing the studies necessary to determine how that bridge could be widened. It wouldn't increase the capacity, the flow capacity. It would only increase the width of the bridgeway itself. We would also have $15,000 that would be used for the replacement of the boiler at the highway garage. All told, we would spend about $821,000 using fund resources that are currently available. That is what's planned for that component. If there's no questions, I'll move on. The next three items are the police computers, communications, and public safety. There's one capital reserve fund which is set up for the police department. There are individual schedules set up for computer equipment replacement, for communications equipment replacement, and for building improvements. On a yearly basis, we make a direct contribution for each of those components to be able to stay ahead of what the departmental needs would be. The communications division migration to the radio box system is a new item, and this has not been considered in the past, and this $20,000 in addition to $10,000 currently available in the communications reserve would be used to study getting away from a hardwire system into a wireless system, determining what type of costs are involved both for the private users and the public users, and then coming up with options on how we would move toward that type of a system. As noted in our previous discussions, the hardwire system is a copper cable that goes back in some places 60 years and is in need of replacement in one form or another. EMS has two items. The diagnostic equipment would be for the power stretcher and the first year on a defibrillator replacement. The vehicle replacement is the third year of a vehicle purchase. Vehicle replacement on EMS transports are about $210,000. What we do is fund that over a 2 to 3 year period to not have spikes in the capital budget. Adult day services, we're looking at...
Steve, I'm sorry, I had a question. During the work session, I had mentioned about the garage improvements so that the rescue would be able to fit in a garage, and you said that the money has been set aside for that project. Is that in the capital improvement reserve fund?
It's in the reserve fund right now.
Okay.
And in fact, we are not experiencing the difficulty because what's been done is one of the two transport rigs does fit within the garage. So those two have been swapped,
Okay.
so that both of those are interior at this point.
Oh, good.
So
Great.
we're not running into that as an urgent problem based on the steps that the EMS director took to try to eliminate having to run that vehicle to keep the medications warm.
Wonderful, thank you.
The adult day is replacement of customized chairs for the population that we're serving. The senior center facilities is a roof set aside where we would start putting money away for a replacement probably over the next 5 years to look at having the money in place to keep that building in top shape. The Veterans Memorial inscription, we're looking at $10,000. As I've said during the sessions, I hope to be able to have council approve contingency funding of that item in the current year so that before Memorial Day, we would have the inscriptions done. The committee has worked real hard in terms of making sure that they've canvassed all of the potential vets that could be listed, and hopefully we'll have a product that the community can be proud of. The information technology program, the monies there would be used on network improvements and also the replacement of the office suite that's used throughout the building for about 50 different licenses that are necessary. Town hall improvements is the same as we do on a yearly basis. It's a recurring set aside, and we have one pool car that's used for all of the different departments in town hall, but principally used by either the assessor's office or the building official's office that's in need of replacement. So the overall budget that's proposed for 16-17 is at $1,484,450 in the general fund. If there's no questions, we're looking at water fund. Each of the enterprise funds do not have any relationship to property tax or the general fund. Any of the costs, whether debt associated or for capital improvements, is generated through rate base itself. We're looking at the first two items for spot repairs that are necessary on our two 400,000-gallon storage tanks at Victoria Lane or Mortucket. The third item, pump station improvements, is to deal with some roof as well as fascia board and gutter replacements that are necessary on the building at Factory Pond. Leak detection is an ongoing program where our objective is to reduce any type of leakage to an acceptable level. From a state perspective, they're looking at around a 10%. We are seeing, in some cases, down to the 10%, but as high as 30%. We've had some major improvements made in the Middlebridge system over the past year, but there is a need for us to continue to set aside dollars for these type of improvements. Water main replacement, because that system goes back to the late 1960s, we're looking at setting aside monies for what we know will be replacements on main sections of that system. That system, while it started in the 60s as a town system, were three private systems that existed before a water authority was created in the town. That was prior to the charter. Once the charter came into place, it became a municipal enterprise fund. The rolling stock is the replacement of a pickup truck. The two trucks that are in that program, one's in need of replacement at this time. The wastewater fund, we're looking at the second year of a 3-year purchase of the standby generator. Again, with wastewater, no property taxes, but there is cost sharing on a use basis with the University of Rhode Island and the town of Narragansett. The pump station improvements are to replace the macerator that's at the hospital pump station. The solid waste handling upgrade is for replacement on dewatering equipment components. The influent headworks is improvements that are necessary on the concrete structure where the materials enter the primary section of our wastewater treatment plant. The chemical storage building is a need for wall improvements to deal with water intrusion, and the interceptor repair is a ongoing maintenance type of responsibility where we would be dealing with the interceptor, particularly that interceptor located along the Saugatucket River. Overall cost would be $562,000. The school fund has 6 projects associated with it. The telecommunications program calls for the replacement of a 12-year-old telephone system. The administrative computers is for their yearly set-aside for replacement of in-house administrative computers. The computer equity is targeted this year at elementary technology, where they'll be bringing computers from high school or middle school into the elementary and moving computers around for best practice purpose. The one-to-one is in its 3rd year. They are looking at $200,000 this year, which will be the 3rd year. Last year they had $400,000. It's down to the $200,000 because it's for one class, which would be the incoming freshman class. At this point, we would have the sophomore and junior year in 16-17 would be using the computers purchased in the previous 2 fiscal years, and the incoming freshman class would be part of this $200,000 appropriation. Network upgrades is similar to what we do on the IT side. There's a work schedule for equipment replacement, and it's replaced on an as-need basis. The last item is the backboard replacement on the high school gymnasium, which school committee talked about when they met with the council for $390,000. So the overall cost on the program is $2,541,000 for the 2016-17 capital budget year. If there's no questions, I'll move on to the long-term projects. The long-term projects look at the 6-year schedule. When we look at the long-term schedule, what we're looking at is, let me grab that sheet. We're looking at a subdivision of 4 different types of activities. One is the leisure services program. Within the leisure services program, we have open space acquisition for that is targeted at a 6-year program at $450,000. We're looking at the South County Commons bike path at $575,000. As noted in the previous discussion on this, we had last year had just the municipally owned section in the budget. We incorporated both sections to show what total cost would be on that project if it were done. We looked at having this project done in the year 2020. We also included it in the TIP program for the state, and if in fact we're successful on that program for grant purposes, we would then be able to move that project up and advance the construction on that program. We also have the Neighborhood Guild renovations. Again, no property taxes associated with that special revenue fund. All money for $1 million in debt bond issue would be paid for through reinvested income within the Guild Trust Fund. The Community Recreation Center, we have shown that this year at $6.6 million. That program is up from the $6,150,000 that was adopted by the council with the adoption of the 15-16 or the current year capital improvement program. That project is also on the agenda tonight for a contract award that is proposed for council consideration. The Marina Park improvements is in for $310,000 over the next 6 years. Principal activities would be improvement to parking lots, both the east and the west lots, as well as in the future year, later year 2020-21, for improvements of the water access. The ramp needs major repairs. We'll also be continuing to seek DEM assistance on that because that is not really just a municipal use ramp. It's used by really anyone who wishes to get pond access. We're also looking at the town beach improvement program of about $120,000. That is an active program where I think we're going to see a need for increases in future years as we go forward. The money right now is looked at in terms of providing better observation capabilities for the beach managers, as well as to improve beach access from the pavilion that's been relocated. The Old Mountain Field renovations is shown at about $452,000. That really deals with two principal issues, one dealing with tennis courts being upgraded, and second, and the largest item, is the long-term objective of replacing the existing restrooms and concession stand into a single building that would be proper for that, based on the uses that occur there. The seniors program, we're looking at $245,000, and that's a mixture of funds with the adult day services, along with improvements to the buildings at the senior center itself. The totals there is $9,882,000 over the next 6 years. When we move into the general municipal program, information technology, we've already talked about schedules that are in place. It's about $280,000 that we see that's necessary for maintaining networks, as well as the peripheral equipments that are used and software. We are also looking at the library program. That's a one-year deal where the trustees for the building will pay for the ice dam replacement program, which is to prevent ice dams from forming on the roof. That work should be done sometime, probably before the start of summer. The property reval looks out 3 years from now when the next reval will be necessary at a $247,900 number. Those monies are already held in trust, or I should say in the reserve fund for revaluation purposes at this point, so there won't be additional tax effort that's necessary. Public Works programs, we've talked about that. That's the $5,532,000 program, which is a 6-year look at the different road improvements, drainage improvements, and so forth. The police department improvements are the 3 programs that we're putting money into: communications, computers, and building. The EMS is again for continual replacement on vehicles, to have that reserve fund fully replenished as we purchase the replacement vehicles, as well as ancillary equipment, whether it's the stretchers, the defibrillators, or the computers that are necessary on the paramedic level trucks. The communications department, I've already addressed that issue. We're looking at first the study, and then looking at what the headwork improvements would be necessary at the dispatch center. We're then looking at the town hall improvements, which is the general transfer on a reoccurring basis. Overall cost of about $7.8 million. The school improvements are listed at $5.235 million this year. I think the council will recall in 2013, we completed a study, an audit of all of the school buildings, and a building safety program and infrastructure improvement program was proposed to the state and adopted by the state for us to be able to get these improvements done. Once that work is done, 35% of the cost of the bonds that are used and the interest that is due on the repayment of the bonds will be reimbursed by the state, as long as each and every one of those items have been approved through that school audit that was completed in 2013. We're anticipating borrowing over the 6-year period $4 million in new school bonds, $1 million in 2016-17, $1 million in 2018-19, and another $2 million in the 19-20 year. Other bonds that are subject to the long-term capital improvement program include the $4.1 million, $4.15 million, which would be with the rec center, the $1 million for the guild. So the overall bonding that would go out of the $24,049,000 program would be $9,550,000. And that's down about $1 million from what we anticipated when we put last year's budget together. Why? Because we're in the second year of the program for doing the school improvements. So there was about $650,000, $700,000 worth of work that's already been completed. That is being paid for through funds available within the school's operating unassigned fund balance. That unassigned fund balance has been transferred by the school committee into the school building construction fund to be able to continue with those improvements. I will say that if the schedule that we have in place for the schools remains as they've presented it, what we will look at is a need for the town council approving us being able to front-load the cost of those improvements with unassigned fund balance so that we can then hold off on doing bonding until we have a critical mass. We don't want to be bonding on a yearly basis because it costs us about $45,000 in prep costs between legal services and reviews with rating agencies. So what we want to do is to do that every 2 years rather than every year. So what we would do is to front-load that those costs either through the school fund or through the general fund. Based on the investment yields that we're seeing at this point, it would be better for us to be losing 1% than to be paying 3% on the bonds. So that's a very fluid situation that we look at on a yearly basis. If you recall, last year there was we dealt with bonds where we sold them a second time to be able to sell them at a cheaper rate than what they had been and saved about $65,000. So we'll continue to take a look at those types of things as well as when we should be entering the market. The last item is the utilities. That's a $1.1 million projected cost that would occur probably in 2020, which would be for the replacement of the water meters in the South Shore and the Middlebridge water system. We're expecting that cost would be about $1,050,000 for that replacement. Those are the electronic readers, similar to what we put into place several years ago. The replacements on the existing units, the warranties will be up. We're looking at a full replacement. It's of key importance for us to be able to read meters on a monthly basis, be able to look at where water is going, whether or not there's leaks in the system, or whether or not there's people that have left homes that may have had frozen pipes, and hopefully we can minimize damage in some of those areas. But again, this will come out of retained earnings within the enterprise fund. It will not impact either its rate base or property taxes. That completes the $24.049 million in the long-term program, of which most of that 2.4 in the first year is something that is resident to the long-term program as well. The last item in the capital improvement program that's shown on the third page of the exhibit is the establishment of fair share fees. There's nothing really to say here. With the education fees, we've recommended no changes over the last 3 years. The fees would remain at $2,162 for single and duplex units of more than 2 bedrooms. Any with multi-household, which is less than 2 bedrooms, would be at 50% of that cost, and accessory apartments would be listed at 1/4 of that cost, or $541. On the rec fees, we're looking at holding those fees constant to the current year 15-16 year rates at $31.40 for single-family homes with more than 2 bedrooms, and with 2 bedrooms or less, it would go down to the 2355. The difference there is the projected value of number of people per household goes from 2.6 at a single-family home to 1.995, I think it is, persons per unit when there's less than 2 bedrooms. So we've got a differential based on the amount of individuals that would be paying toward the recreation fees. That completes, I think, everything I need to say or put on the record as far as the capital improvement program is concerned, as well as the capital budget. I'm certainly glad to answer any questions or address any concerns that council or the general public may have on the document itself.
Thanks, Steve. Is there anything that needed to be added to the public record?
There was one communication that was sent to Terry Murphy. It's dated January 21st, 2016. It's from Chris Hopkins, the Director of Programs for the Special Olympics of Rhode Island, and he is endorsing the new recreation center.
With that, any questions for Steve from the council?
I have a few comments. As usual, a very tight and efficient capital improvement program for the most part. No surprise the rec center is a concern to me. We've got $4.15 million of approved bonding. 2 of those bonds are 10 and 12 years, nearly 10 and 12 years ago when we had a better economy. We have somewhere around $2 million. It's sort of a moving target, the price of this thing, but we have somewhere around $2 million that has not been approved by the voters, and I would entertain that we should consider putting the additional cost that this building is going to cost to a referendum vote in November. And let the taxpayers speak about the increased cost of this project.
Other question?
I unfortunately feel differently, but that's why there's 5 of us with different personalities that sit up here representing our constituency. This has gone before the voters on 3 different occasions, and regardless how, tight or large the margins were, the voters' voices have been heard. And I think that when I view this center, I look at it not as a rec center. I don't look at it as a competing factor to other businesses in this town. But more importantly, I view this as a sense of community. I wouldn't even call it a rec center. I would call it a community center. We have children in our community, although we all know there's been a slight decline in our population, who need a place to go, who need a sense of importance. And we have a senior population who certainly could utilize and enjoy the benefits of this type of facility, particularly at its location right next door to the senior center. Is it going to be a cost to us? Will it be a large cost initially? Sure it will. But do we want to be a model for the state? We talk about healthy places by design. We constantly talk about the use of bike paths, increasing the path down from this potential rec center to the commons, accessibility to the overall population, walkability from the schools. I think if we didn't do this project, it would be a detriment to our community. And I look at it in the opposite perspective because I think it's going to be a place that people will enjoy for years to come. I really truthfully do.
I was going to save my comments about the rec center for the items under new business, but I'm happy to say them now. I do have some concerns, although I I recognize the value in the project and the demand for it. We've heard from Terry Murphy about how there's just not enough space for the teams that need to play in our schools, the intramural leagues. Things have changed a lot. But I also agree with Joe that two of those bonds were from several years ago, before we really had the kind of economy that we do now. And it's something that, this isn't an easy choice when we talk about raising taxes or how it's going to affect the residents in South Kingstown. And I also think of the senior citizens that are going to be able to utilize it when they're at the senior center, but I also think of the senior citizens that are on a fixed income. I know that there was no raise in Social Security this year, and I've heard from several senior citizens that are really concerned about the rec center and how it's going to affect them long term, along with working families that just haven't seen an increase in wages over the years. So I have mixed feelings about it because I do want to see it, and I think that it'll be a huge asset to our community, but I also recognize the impact that it's going to have. And none of those bonds pass with an overwhelming majority, so there is a big chunk of people out there that really don't support it. So I think that it's a tough issue to navigate, and not something I feel as confident in as I did before.
I think that the letter we received from Chris Hopkins from the Special Olympics speaks to one group of athletes that we really, I would like to see have a state-of-the-art facility. If we could hold Special Olympics activities in our new recreation center, I think that would be fantastic. I don't believe, we see with going back and trying to put in elevators at the Guild, how costly it is. This, you know, we all know I think this is a great idea. It's a community recreation center. It's for our entire community, and it would finally be a building that could really have a space for everyone in the community. And I just can't say enough about it. Yes, it's more expensive, and the longer we wait, the more expensive it's going to be. If we put this off again, the price is just going to go up. And then we're going to be back here 2 years from now saying, well, now it's more expensive. I think the time is right, the time is now, and we need to go forward with this project.
All right. Are there,
Meg, I just have one comment. The voters have spoken about 2/3 of the cost, but they have not had a say in 1/3 of the cost of this project.
this is true. Are there questions on other parts of this CIP? For Steve? At this point, then, I'd invite folks from the public to come up to the podium, state your name. If you have comments on any portion of this capital improvement program or the capital budget for this coming year, please let us know.
Hi, Kenny Burke. I'm not here to talk about the rec center, but I am here on behalf of Healthy Places by Design, and I've appeared before you several times already over the past month to speak up for consideration for snow plowing equipment for sidewalks in and around downtown and around the school facilities. During the extreme weather events, it's very helpful to ensure that kids can continue to walk to school and folks can continue to shop in and around Main Street and the Peacedale area. One other thing, in regard to the repaving of Matunic Beach Road, we did follow up with staff and went to the Traffic and Transportation Review Committee meeting at Public Safety Complex last week, and we discussed how the town might take a look at the Complete Streets resolution that the town council passed back in January of 2011. And at this point, I think it's an open-ended question. I know that there's been efforts from the staff at the request of former councils to try to look at accommodating pedestrians out in the village of Matunic that were unsuccessful. And we simply want to continue to work with the neighborhood in Matunic as well as staff to figure out what's appropriate for that section of road before it gets paved, leveled, and folks start driving at faster speeds. So I'm not sure how this works, but I'd just like you to have kind of a mental note as you go through the budgeting process that there could be some additional cost for an appropriate treatment for Matunic Beach Road as you enter into the village. And really, I'd like to defer that decision to staff. So I just want to make that point that we support the paving, but I think there's some additional work that needs to be done to ensure the safety of the pedestrians and the bicyclists in that area. Thank you.
Steve, with municipal road projects, I'm familiar with DOT's process, but are there public opportunities for comment on a specific project like that? Do you get community?
The capital improvement program that you have before you is simply is a paving of that roadway. It's not a reconstruction. I would note that if we were going to introduce sidewalks for going from the school down to the market, you're probably looking at between $150,000 and $200,000. Yes, I believe it was 2000 that we looked at this. We brought it forward, and there was a public hearing on it, and it was rejected by the public. Some of the rejection was from the property owners that were concerned on curb cuts that they would lose. And while I agree that we would love to see every street have a sidewalk, we have to look at the practical reality. I'm not sure that that the rural character would not be adversely affected if, in fact, we were going to put a curb line in with a 5-foot setback of grass and a proper concrete walkway. I think something less than that, but I'm not sure whether we're trying to serve bicycles. I've hear one moment it's bicycles, 1 minute it's pedestrians. I'm not sure. All I'm saying to you is that if we were going to incorporate a sidewalk construction program into the capital budget, we would need to do advanced planning and determine what roads would warrant that type of work and establish some type of criteria or have some type of an idea. If we were going to study this at this point, you're going to delay the construction or the paving of that road, which I think is a safety hazard to bicyclists right now, because one of the things that this paving job will do is to put a proper crown on that road, will lift the drainage basins from where they are right now so that they'll be at a proper elevation. The road is only 24 feet wide. There's been questions raised on why we can't provide signage for share the road or for some type of a 2-foot line. I don't think that that meets what the standards are for. If we as a community put those type of signs up, we're providing greater assurances to the bicyclists that, in fact, they're invited to use that road. And there's less care that they need to take because it's a proper road. You can't have, with the speeds that occur on Matunic Beach Road, 2 cars passing abreast with two bicycles passing abreast simultaneously. Is that something that's going to happen often? Hopefully not. But at the same time, the most use that you're going to get is during the high traffic periods of the summer. We can look at some type of sidewalk or pedestrian way, but for bicycles, I just don't see that we can do anything unless we expanded the width of that road. And every time you expand a road, or you put sidewalks in, or you put a curb line in, you're also going to have to address drainage issues. If it's just a repaving of the road, we're not going to be forced to do new or bigger changes. But I looked at what the cost estimate was going back to when those sidewalks were first planned and went to public hearing. Took about a 30% factor on that in terms of cost inflations, and you're in the area of 150 to 200,000 is John's most recent estimate as of today. I think it's a great idea, but I don't think it's a practical idea to incorporate that at this time. We can still do the paving. We can look at whether there's any type of other services that can be provided that would assist. But I don't think it's, I don't think we should delay that repaving on the belief that we're going to be able to come up with $200,000 roughly to put a sidewalk in an area that I'm not even sure that the public is looking for that.
Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Bob Atava. I'm from Wakefield. One of the words that's discussed or thrown out, that's presented this evening is complete streets. And so I think we're all aware that nationwide everybody is concerned about their health and a little more walking. And putting this into context with some of the leadership that South Kingston has shown over the years, when the South County Bike Path was first suggested, one of the first pieces of leadership to come forth from the town was one of the very high people in DOT came to Mr. Alford and stated that he shouldn't get involved with this. It was just going to be a problem. Fortunately, Mr. Alford had the leadership to realize that this gentleman was mistaken. But the next example of leadership that had to come forth was that the South County Bike Path was to be the first one in the state where the town would have to maintain the bike path. And again, we compliment Mr. Alford for his leadership in taking on this responsibility. And through the years, the different phases, which now totally go through South Kingston, has been maintained at a very high degree, and I think is recognized statewide of the responsibility that South Kingston takes for its infrastructure. One of the problems that's created by the South County Bike Path is that people are walking on it. And so more and more people are walking. And we now come to the problem of the winter and snow removal. There has been proposals for a piece of equipment to assist in the snow removal. It seems like a small piece of change in relation to the budget that's presented this evening. But I think the council, as well as Mr. Alford, should realize, I think that this is to achieve complete streets, meaning in the winter snow removal, that this would be a team not only of the town, the commercial district, but also the citizens. And I think that we could think of it as economic development. And the town has suggested going with a solar program, a piece of leadership that I'm not sure other towns have presented. Why can't South Kingston be one of the first to have a very aggressive snow cleanup program that's not only the town's involvement, the merchants, but also members of our community? We could publicize this, local newspapers, as well as the Providence Journal, et cetera, and demonstrate, again, the leadership of South Kingston. But snow removal is a problem that is being discussed statewide. When we attend the DOT directors' meetings, which ABLE attends, the questions are frequently raised, and such aspects of it come forth as like we have our bus stops, our bus shelters, and they're covered with snow. How do towns deal with this? So I think more and more and more people are thinking of other forms of transportation than just the automobile. So again, I would ask you, the town council, if this piece of equipment is needed, I would suggest that you vote for it this evening. If not, then let's get organized in a way that we achieve a goal. Again, there's many merchants, and I'm not going to mention names, that step beyond their properties to assist others. Unfortunately, we have a merchant on Main Street, Northrop Motors. He cleans right to the edge of the bike path, but then there's a little bit of easement that's actually the town's property he doesn't clean up. So there's about 6 feet of snow going from his to where the bike path has been cleaned. But again, no sense of community. And this gentleman, over the years, we've complained about this many times, and Mr. Vespia can defend such. He parks his vehicles such that it minimizes the width of the sidewalk. So this is an example of somebody that needs to be taken forth and asked to become a member of our community, like many others have. So again, do we need this piece of equipment? I can't say exactly, but it's a small item to achieve a product that I think can make our town statewide a real leader. Thank you.
Steve, could you speak, probably not everybody in the audience knows that we've had pretty extensive discussions about this piece of equipment at the council table. It was not recommended from the Public Services Department that we put it in the budget. Can you speak about what we could achieve if we purchase this piece of equipment? Like, give us any type of details there.
There was a question that was raised by Representative Tansey on what would be the specifications for a piece of equipment, excuse me, that could be used for snow removal. The information was asked from John Shaw. He came back and said a Bobcat skid steer. I get choked up on these discussions.
Take your time.
And he spec'd out the skid steer. But I want people to understand the skid steer has a V-plow on it that's 5 feet wide. Even with the articulating blade on it, it still cuts a 4-foot path. Any place that doesn't have 4 feet is not going to be able to have the V-blade used on it. It also has a 36-inch snow blower attachment that comes with it. And the cost of the unit's about $30,000. The spec price was $27,000, but I think when you get done with everything, you're talking around $30,000. There are certainly other uses for it, but I want it clear that a skid steer would be more effective on Main Street, on High Street, Columbia, Church Street, School Street, those streets which have got a wide enough sidewalk, and there's a throw area or a front lawn. You can't use a snow blower on Main Street if you've got a building at the end of the sidewalk. You can't use a 5-foot blade on Main Street if you've got obstructions like poles or fire hydrants or those type of things within the sidewalk. So, yes, this type of equipment would be helpful in terms of us not having to use the smaller walk-behind snow blowers on the school loop, which is what we use, or using the street grader on the streets where we don't have any utility poles. So yes, it would be helpful on the bike path as well. But again, the reason we put a capital budget together is we go to the Public Services Director and we say to him, what are the equipment priorities that you have? We don't ask him what it is that he wants. We ask him what it is that he needs. Now, the Bobcat skid steer hasn't come through in his analysis as being a high enough priority for that purchase at this time. If the council were to purchase it, would we make good use of it? Certainly we would. But the other question is, when we look at the size of the capital budget this year, if we were going to add this, are we willing to add it, or are there things that you want to take out? And if so, then you're going back to Mr. Schock and saying, well, which item is a lower priority because we're going to move this into a priority. So, yes, it's something that we could consider at a, in a future capital improvement program. It wasn't incorporated into this one. It can be added if that's what the council wished. Would it be used? Yes. But I'm not going to say that this is the end-all that's going to solve all problems on Main Street. It's going to assist, but it's certainly not going to be something that's going to solve all of the issues there.
Well, I think it's important also to note that Representative Tanzi, when she did attend our work session, said she had applied for a grant for this piece of equipment, and it was looking good. So I don't see putting $30,000 into a budget when this could come through on a grant, so.
But that, I think the question on the Bobcat came up after we'd already started the capital project. I mean, the
Right.
capital project starts back in July, and that's when the priorities list were put together on both the public works equipment and in Terry's office for the for public grounds. But again, I'm not going to say that the equipment wouldn't be used, but I am saying it has limited utility if it was supposed to be the piece of equipment that was going to reduce the workload requirements on snow removal on Main Street. It would assist, but it would not be the end-all.
There's been some discussion about extending the loop for where we clear the sidewalks. And if we did that and did not purchase another piece of equipment, would they have the staff to do that if we say we wanted to extend the loop down Main Street?
Well, again, every time we expand, it isn't so, the other thing that we talked about, I think, extensively, is it's not just the equipment needs, it's the labor that's required for snow removal on sidewalks. I've indicated that I won't allow more than 30 hours of direct work with anybody that's dealing with public service issues. And depending on the storm's durations, if the storms go for an 18-hour, if we've got a requirement for 2 sandings and 2 full plows, which is actually 4 plows, because we have to go in and then cut back on the second. We don't have the labor to do it immediately. The big problem is if you don't do snow removal immediately, after you do the roads, you've got the potential for icing, and if it ices up, you're not going to remove it unless you're using a front-end loader. This storm was a wonderful storm in relation to storms because it was nice fluffy snow. It came during a time when people were off the roads. We were able to get our work done. We were able, in fact, today to get all of the loop finished in terms of getting all of the sidewalks opened in school for the, in town for schools. But every time we expand that, it's going to become more difficult. And the question is, I could have a beautiful Bobcat sitting there. If I don't have the labor available to operate it, then its efficiency goes down. So there's a number of those types of things. I also think that, I give a lot of credit to the people on Main Street. When I looked this morning at 7 o'clock when I came through, 90%, at least 90%, had the windrow at the curb line and had a proper walking space available for public in front of their establishments. And I think that, that's the type of community that we need to have. Some communities have gone so far as to put ordinances in that just pass the buck and say that the person who has 500 feet in front of their house has got to be responsible for clearing that. I'm not sure that that's an effective way of going any more than assuming that, what are the bounds that we're going to have for snow removal? Is it going, we've never done anything to the west of High Street, yet we've already had questions on whether, if we're going to clear Main Street and take that as a municipal responsibility, how far up are we going to go past the Mews? So, I mean, what we're looking at is, we don't have a defined program. And if we define it the way the public wishes it to be defined, it's going to be much larger than it currently is. Today, what we try to do is to take each storm as it comes and determine what best services we can provide for the community. And, I mean, we've done this for all the time that I've been here, and I don't think that taking full responsibility or saying that we will take full responsibility for snow removal in any given area of town makes sense, because we can't say if we have a blizzard of 78 that we're going to be able to do those things in a timely basis, or based on what the weather conditions are and the type of snow. I think what we need to be able to do is to do the best that we can on each and every storm and work with the property owners in hopes of being able to have real community spirit. That's the best I can give you. Either that or you're talking about trying to bring in an additional labor that's going to be available for that specific purpose, which is very limited.
Can I say something?
Sure.
And please don't call me simple stupid, but truthfully, I'm just going to put this out there. I grew up in the city. I've lived down here, though, my entire life. And I've lived down here now since, I don't know, 1963, on and off in the summers. But I remember the day when I was growing up and we had large storms. My parents would throw all four of us out and say, shovel the driveway. Okay, I'm not asking people in the town to do that. I don't want to shovel mine. I live on a private road. I have somebody who plows it. But the bottom line is this: why can't the private businesses form some type of a partnership with the university? These kids at URI, they want a buck, whether they want to get a free lunch or they want a buck for whatever their activities are. I'll give you for example, I have a son who goes to Salve, and he and his roommates went out yesterday and went up and down Thames Street and shoveled all the sidewalks in front of the businesses in Thames Street. And the kids made pretty decent money. And they were home before the Patriots game. And the Red Parrot on the corner gave them free lunch. I don't know why we can't try to form that type of partnership for kids that, you know what, that are working. Parents don't always send them money. And here they can spend 3 or 4 hours and make a few bucks. It would be something that would be really conducive to some of the businesses to look into, because a lot of people don't have the time. They want their businesses open. A lot of people like me are old, and people need to, you know, make their business viable. But that would be a good outreach, and it would give the kids a few bucks. It would give the businesses more notoriety. And guess what? You might even get a couple of kids coming back to go visit your establishment, whether it's a store or a restaurant or something of that nature. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not saying that it's the business's responsibility, but I just think it's another viable option that could work.
Thanks, Meg. You're not old, by the way.
I had one more question. I think we heard from some, I'm sorry, Jim, just 1 second. I heard from, or we heard from businesses that the problem last year was that they didn't have any place to put the snow. And I think that I remember the town also had that issue where at some point we just didn't have any place to put it. Is there any way that we could make available to the town, to the businesses on Main Street, somewhere to put it when it gets to that point?
I said to you before I would look into that. Our problem is that the only place we can put it is at the highway garage. And I think the question was there any private property that the businesses could contract with to be able to do the deposit? I haven't heard that they've made any effort to determine whether there's any private lots that they can go to. But, you know, our problem is I can't have the highway department facility open for anybody to come in and to dump snow because I'm not sure where it's coming from. So I'd have to have a person there so that they'd have some type of manifest as to where the materials are coming from or who they're operating with. I don't think that would work, but certainly if the businesses had some idea on how it could work or we certainly would talk with them, but I haven't been approached after that night that it was brought up.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the public?
Jim O'Neill, Matunic. Matunic Beach Road. Steve, when you talk about leveling it, are we going to go down? Is the sides coming up? How are we going to level this? Because just driving down Matunic Beach Road now, either way, you have to hang on to that wheel. The slope is so severe on either side, away from the center. So what are the plans?
John will set the pitch of that road, similar to what we did on Saugatucket Road.
Okay.
It's gradual. I mean, the problem with Matunic Beach Road right now is that you've got the trench line that was, the water line going up to Perryville. That was, 15, 20 years ago. That's part of it. Plus, at that point, the basins, I don't think were set at the proper rate.
I don't think they were either. Yeah.
But I think what we're looking at is just the traditional crown in that road that all roads would have, Jim. We're not looking to change anything because I don't want to change water patterns.
Yeah. Well, Kenny brought up sidewalks there. Certainly living there most of my life, we certainly don't need sidewalks. I think we need sidewalks on places on Woodruff and Kenyon, and as you mentioned, west of the Larchwood Mews area on both sides. Folks fortunately have enough of a yard, if you will, between the stone walls and street to negotiate. Certainly tough on a bicycle, but there are a lot more places, a lot more crowded places in town that could use sidewalks than the Matunic Beach area. And where Matunic Beach area is busy, Mary Carpenter's, Vanilla Bean, Tara's, Ocean Mist, we do have a sidewalk on one side there, so that takes care of the crowds and most of our summer crowds. So that shouldn't be an issue. Rachel mentioned grants that Representative Tansey was hoping to get for South Kingstown. I guess I see that as a problem for the state, because can you imagine if South Kingstown got their little Bobcat? Can you only imagine what Providence, Pawtucket, and the other cities and towns, you're talking millions of dollars when their requests for those same grants come in. I think I really agree with Steve. I have an office on Main Street. My sidewalk was almost the correct width this morning, but I think there's a real partnership that's going on right now. I don't want to get to the point like Narragansett with some of the bad renters over there that get the scarlet letter pinned to the front door, but I think downtown is doing a wonderful job, much better job. And if we get the huge blizzard, everyone's just going to have to tough it out. There's nothing you can do. I don't want equipment on top of equipment, and as Steve said, where are we going to find the labor to take care of it? And then finally, you've talked about the rec center, and I know it's coming up later, but I agree with everything that Meg said earlier about it being a community center. And there is no question, Joe, you are right, that if you want to call it inflation, or the cost of this building has certainly exceeded what we hoped for a few years ago. But one of the main reasons I brought up why I supported the community center was because of our net bonded debt situation, which Steve Alford and this council and past councils have managed quite well. We're down to record low levels and gave us an opportunity where we could finance the rec center. If we were still up in the $40, $50 million area, I'd say no. But by the time this thing gets going, I think we're down in the $20 million range. Steve can correct me, but we're in a very fortunate financial position due to the people in this town. So I would certainly side with moving forward with that. And remember, a lot of us can't walk beaches. We can't walk our open space trails. A lot of folks with the grunt of winter having an indoor facility in town where most of the population is a good idea and a smart long-term idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll keep it short, and I'll try not to go over everything I did last time. I respect what you have to say about the increased cost of the rec facility, but I want to remind you that we talk about 3 bond issues that were passed by the voters. It doesn't matter whether they were passed overwhelmingly or not. When you vote in favor of something, whether it's 1 vote or 1 million, it passes. This is something that's been on the docket in one form or another, or in the pipeline, like I said last meeting, since the late 80s, early 1990s. I'm going to go over it again. South Kingstown Junior High School is being renovated, classrooms are being added. They were going to take that gymnasium and make it into a media center. Libraries were passé. That was the first we ever heard of what a media center was. That's when technology first started to bloom. So they were going to take, and we were saying, going to take that whole area and make it a media center. Well, then they were going to build a new gymnasium. Times were tough. The economy was bad. So they pulled back on that, and they were going to renovate the gym and renovate the locker rooms instead, and only take up a couple classrooms to expand the media center, or the library at the time. It was too costly to expand that gymnasium. It wasn't worth it. And to renovate the locker rooms, too much was involved. It's like sometimes when you get into renovations of a house, it gets worse and worse and worse until you have to knock the whole thing down, and it's a lot more costly than you had figured in the beginning. So they scrapped that plan, and nothing was done. That goes back to 1989, 90, early 90s. Around that time, Steve could probably give you the exact dates on that. So nothing was done, and it has not been done until this point, because in its place was going to be a gymnasium placed behind that school. And at first it was a school project, then it became a town project because people felt, let's not make this for the use of the schools, let's make it for the use of everyone. Okay, we had the neighborhood guild. When I was growing up, you see that little gymnasium in there, and all those rooms, they were filled to the hilt all the time. The town grew. We don't have a place. I used to play basketball with Steve when he first came around here at lunchtime. And a whole bunch of other people. Politics had in that guild. People got jobs in that guild. Friendships developed. Diversity bloomed in this town. And that's another thing that I have a big problem with. We've closed out a whole bunch of people. They can't afford things. You talk about people can't afford this rec center? We can't afford to close people out anymore. Jim O'Neill, you just said it the best I could. The debt service is at its lowest point in a long time, and that's why this project has been moved along, to wait for the right time. Because after every bond issue was passed, everybody wanted to open the champagne bottles and say, hooray, finally. It didn't happen. And it didn't happen again. It didn't happen again because it wasn't the right time. Okay, I'm saying now, this is the right time. You go out and you talk to people in the community. If you go to a large number, okay, a diverse number of people, and you talk to them, a lot of people cannot believe that this hasn't moved forward yet. So for the good of the community, I understand your concerns, but those have been concerns for the last 25 years. And I have elderly people in my family who are struggling. I have people in my family who are in business, small business. They're struggling. Okay, but I think each one of them would look at the greater picture and the greater good. And I ask you to go along with the recommendations and pass it.
Hi, Dave Pelzetti, Peacedale. I was a member of the Rec Center committee that put the building together with the town, and also the newest member of the Recreation Commission, so I thank you for that appointment. I just wanted to make a couple of comments on things that were actually brought up here at this meeting. I'll leave it for the others, like Bob, that can speak more eloquently on the overall need. Although I am one of those parents that picks up my 12-year-old at 9 o'clock at night to get him home from basketball practice, so definitely the need is there. But the comment about the 3 bonds that were passed, they were passed, and Everybody's saying it doesn't matter if it's one vote or not, but actually it passed by a 12% margin, 56 to 44, this last bond. And I know there was some discussion about, you know, they only voted on 67% of the bonds. The voter information that went out from this town that was published by the town clearly stipulated that it was a $1 million bond plus $1 million of impact fees from recreation plus $1 million of unassigned fund balance. So the people that were voting this last time knew that there was going to be another $1 million from impact, another $1 million from the general fund balance, plus the $1 million bond, plus the $3 million bonds that were already there. So they knew about the full $6 million, and they still voted at a 12% margin in favor of this. So I think the voters clearly spoke. Comment that Councilwoman Clow made about the cost will only get more expensive. From my background as a facilities engineer, the economy is turning around, and it's turning around the construction industry a lot faster than it's turning around in the other sectors. We're putting out bids. They're coming in far above our budgets right now. And here you already have a price in hand by a good contractor that's been negotiated with your town engineers. It's a good number. It's a good project. And you're never going to pay as little as you before. We talk about getting more with less, and I always like to say, you know, we can do more with less. If we don't do this now, we're going to pay more and get less in the future. And lastly, I think Councilwoman Healy had mentioned it's not a rec center, it's a community center. It's more than a community center. I look at it as a community campus. You've got a senior center, you've got trails, you've got a dog park, you've got baseball fields, you've got the possibility to add soccer, lacrosse fields, all in one area. You add this rec center, it's going to be the entire community. And they're going to be there not because there's an event and, you know, fireworks are great, people come to fireworks and leave. People are going to be coming and going all day long, bringing in their dogs, watching a baseball game, going over and walking on the walking trail from the senior center, or watching the basketball game, be it a high school basketball game or a rec basketball game. There's going to be people in and out of that area all the time. People from this town, which is rather large space-wise, are going to be coming to the center of town and seeing each other and interacting. And that's what makes a community. And that's why I think this is the best location for it. It's the right time to do it. And I fully support the vote for it tonight.
Thank you.
My name is Roger Fazio. Like Dave, I was on the planning committee for the rec center. I live here in South Kingstown. I was making a lot of notes, and I had a lot of reasons why you should vote for the rec center. I was going to go on long-winded speech, but most of those things have been said. The gyms we have now are inadequate. They can't service the needs of the community. We mentioned many times about how this might hurt businesses, but the current businesses that we have in this town cater to adults who want to work out. They don't cater to youth sports and adults who want to play sports. This is a recreation center. Also, youth sports is a business by itself, okay? Bringing people into this town. We talk about how our population might be dwindling. Well, maybe one of the reasons is because we don't have facilities that want to draw people into this town, and this kind of a facility will do that. Believe me, we have a lot of people right now who get in their car with their kids and leave South Kingstown to do youth sports activities, and they take their dollars with them. So I had all those reasons, and I just mentioned them briefly. But the most important thing, I think, is I'm a pediatrician, so I deal with children all the time. You as a town council have to represent the voters, but you also have to represent the citizens of South Kingstown. And that includes the youth who can't vote. I know our democracy is set up so people under 18 can't vote, but when my wife and I voted in favor of this project, it wasn't just 2 votes. There were a family of 4, and that's 4 citizens of South Kingstown who were in favor of this project. So don't forget to keep that in mind. Maybe this wouldn't have been such a narrow vote if we would have taken into account the opinions of the people of this town, even though they're not voters, but the citizens of this town who would actually benefit the most from this community center. So don't forget, you're not just up there representing the voters of South Kingstown, but the citizens of South Kingstown, including those youth who can't vote and who need this recreation center. Thank you.
I love that point. They're, they're my favorite little citizens.
Any other comments from the public?
I'll just make a response to Dave. I think in November of 2014, when the referendum was passed, the project was somewhere around $5 million at that point. So, I mean, the costs have increased since then. I could be mistaken.
All right.
Five.
I don't remember what the publication was that we did, but the price has gone up. Last year, it was at 6.15 when we talked about the project and it was approved in the capital budget. The rec fees were $1 million, where what we're recommending now is the 1.25, so it's a $250,000 more than what was in the current year capital improvement program. The $200,000 in new dollars from undesignated funds, so there's $450,000 more that's required this year than when the council adopted it last year.
And to the point of competition, which I know a lot of people aren't sold on that, but I think it was December of 2013, there was an article in the South County Independent that indicated that town staff was not concerned with the affordability, but they were concerned about traffic and competition issues.
I just want to say, too, like I said from the beginning, I recognize the demand and the need for the project and how important it is. And I've been mulling this over for the last few weeks and looking at all the numbers and the value in people coming here and saying what they said, like what Dr. Fazio just said about voting for everybody and not just the voters. And Mr. Kavanaugh, I mean, I love what you said last time you were here, but the things that you said tonight, it's so valuable. So anybody who comes here and says what they have to say, whether it's popular or not popular or it's hard to say, it does make a difference when it comes to making these choices. So thank you for your input.
Yes.
And respectfully, really, all I'm asking for is that we give the voters the chance to vote on the full project.
All right, I think we don't see any more another comment from the council? My perspective on the Community Rec Center, and I want to thank people for coming out and for all the input we've heard over the various meetings when we've discussed it, is that this is the right time and it's in the right place. I really enjoyed hearing Mr. Fazio's reasoning. That's the first time we had heard that point made, and I thought it was pretty powerful. You know, I don't think that it makes a lot of sense to wait and put it on another ballot. I think it just adds debt to the project, and we have the resources to make this investment now. And that's why we build up these reserves, so we can, as a council, determine when we have a good opportunity. And we do have that here, so I'll be supporting that in this capital improvement program. With that, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
So moved. Further discussion? All right, all in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. Do I hear a motion to approve the capital improvement program?
I make a motion to approve item number 7 on page 2 of the agenda for the adoption of the proposed fiscal year 2016 to fiscal year 2021-22 capital improvement program, as has been shown on Exhibit 1.
Second?
So moved. Further discussion?
I appreciate everybody's input. I respect your positions. I just ask that you respect mine.
Yes.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
With a vote of 4 to 1, that motion carries. And that brings us to item 8 on our agenda. Under communications is a communication dated January 13th, 2016, from Jeffrey Willis, Deputy Director of Coastal Resources Management Council, requesting the Town Council to confirm that L. Vincent Murray is the CRMC alternate for South Kingstown. It's been received and placed on file. What are we going to do with it? Or, Steve, do you want to make any comment about this item?
No, as I said in the pre-session, Vin has been the council's appointee. He hasn't lost at one of the hearings yet to impress them.
I'll make a motion to extend Vin's sentence.
Second.
So moved. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Very good. Item 8B is a communication received January 15th, 2016 from Ken Tetzner, President of the Wakefield Village Association, requesting Town Council endorsement of a grant to install banners along Main Street, a letter of support for the project, a letter of commitment of $5,000 as the Wakefield Village Association's 30% match for the grant, and to act as fiduciary agent for the grant. It's been received. Do you want to go over this, Steve, or should we have Kenny Burke come up? This, sure.
I would assume that Mr. Burke's representing Mr. Tetzner.
All right.
Yes, Mr. Alfred, Council. I did speak with Kenny Tetzner earlier today, so on behalf of Wakefield Village Association, I'm here to ask your support for this grant application request to the Commerce Corps of Rhode Island. They have a Main Street streetscape grant program. It seems to be pretty explicit. You can request up to $300,000 in grant money. We have put in for or suggesting a grant of $15,000 thereabouts. The town match would be about $5,000, and it's specifically to try to get some banners set up on Main Street. We've been working with town staff and the businesses in the Wakefield Village Association for probably going on 2 years to see how we could get banners installed along Main Street, generally speaking from High Street on down towards Columbia. Initially, the effort was with Verizon and National Grid, and we didn't have much success in convincing them that we could actually hang banners on their wooden telephone poles. That discussion turned into looking at the decorative light poles that are in place in a much smaller segment of Main Street, about 22 poles that are there. And we've worked with some banner manufacturers. We've got some conceptual artwork for the banners, the brackets, and this grant application came along. So we very quickly put the grant application together in the hopes that we could actually get a much larger 70% match from the state to get banners installed along that section of Main Street. We do believe it's aligned with the village study for Main Street in Wakefield, and it's been kind of a long-range goal for the Wakefield Village Association to continue to try to market the businesses in the area as well as the village as a whole.
Questions for Mr. Burke?
Have you gotten the approval, the 70% approval yet for this?
No, great question. So what we're asking for right now is just the support of the council as the fiduciary and as the match. That will allow us to apply for the grant, and after receiving the grant, then we'll get notification, hopefully, of the award. And I have asked, I had conversations with folks at Commerce Corporation, and it meets the cursory review of applicability at this point, but there's no guarantee.
Kenny, the last thing you're asking for in the letter that Ken sent was for the town to act as the fiduciary.
That's correct, Mr. Alfred. So the WVA doesn't have a large, bank account, so we would like to see if, expecting this as a reimbursement request, if the town would act as fiduciary.
Is this in lieu of the money that they typically ask for in the budgetary process, or is this on top of what Wakefield Village typically asks for on a monetary basis?
Right, so this is a separate request. Right now, WVA, I think, gets around $3,500 a year. That basically offsets some of their operational costs to maintain the lights on Main Street. The cost of the lights is actually in addition to what the town already gives WVA, so they're already contributing to the upkeep of those lights.
Will they have any financial responsibility for this project, or is it solely on the town?
It's predominantly going to be with the grant match from the town, and again, trying to get the 70% match from the state.
So the Wakefield Village Association won't have any money invested in this project?
No, this is all brand-new capital, so aside of the $2,500 a year that they throw into the lights for that large section of Main Street, there's no new money that they're putting into just being a brand-new project.
And the talk is of these banners, so it would go from the Muse to up past the Purple Cow?
It's a little bit shorter section just because it's concentrated where the decorative poles are now.
So where would that exactly be?
Exactly,
Well,
it's
roughly.
just a little bit around Arnold Lumber down to 401 Studios. It's a shorter area, not much shorter. There's an opportunity to look at Main Street being a much broader area, but we figured right now the decorative poles are exactly where they are. We can't really do anything beyond that, but if we can get the banners installed here, you could perhaps come back and look at expansion of the banner theme at a later date.
And what will they say? What are the banners going to be?
That's still something that's in design. The concepts are really just kind of a blue color, an anchor, talks about Wakefield Village Association. It's not branding any specific businesses. It's really about the village. So the idea is to kind of market Main Street as a corridor, a historic corridor in the town.
Steve had mentioned that some engineering study needed to be done on how the wind would affect the base of the decorative poles.
Right.
So would that cost be covered by the grant money, or was that something that the town would have to do?
The cost would be covered by the grant money. So we've prepared estimates on the fabrication of the banners, the bracket arms, the installation, as well as preceding all of that, the wind load design calculations. That will drive the size of the banner that we can actually install on those poles.
And were you just going to have one design, or were you going to change it out over the seasons?
Right now, this is just to get one design right now. The thought is that over time, depending on how everybody reacts to the branding of that section of Main Street, that certainly you could change things out on a seasonal basis, just like many other communities throughout Rhode Island.
So who would be choosing the design of this project if it were to go through?
Right now, WVA has screened a few concepts, and they're simply at that stage right now. They've got a few concept drawings and be happy to share them with you. But effectively, it's the Wakefield Village Association.
Any further questions for Mr. Burke?
Well, you're a numbers guy, I'm a numbers girl. I mean, bottom line, financial situations. I want to do anything to promote small business, and I want to do everything to protect the integrity of the businesses, especially on Main Street. Everybody that works so hard down there, they're wonderful, wonderful neighbors, and they enhance this community to the nth degree. My only question, or the thing that I think about in the back of my head, is, okay, if there's $5,000 we're going to give to WVA, what if Matunic asks us to put out banners? Or what if South County Commons would like us to put out banners to promote businesses in the other parts of town? Believe me, do not negate what I say about downtown Wakefield, because I love it. I'm a big advocate of shopping locally, eating locally, going to the theater. I'm not saying no to this, but I'm thinking with a yes, what do we do when the next village comes up and wants to do the same thing? Peacedale, you know, that's the only question I have. I'm not necessarily opposed to it, Ken, because you know
Sure.
I like to support local businesses, and I'm for economic development.
Right. No, it's a great question, and, you know, it's fortunate that we only have a handful of villages that we're really focused on in South Kingstown, and we're fortunate the planning department did take a look at villages throughout the town, so they've identified corridors that are important and to the town as a whole through a series of public meetings. Fortunately, in Main Street, it was clear that branding, you know, this section of Main Street was important. You know, certainly, as you mentioned, the Contemporary Theater and other venues on Main Street, it's got a certain panache, a certain feel to it. And I think it's appropriate, certainly given the decorative poles in a short section, just to accentuate what's already there. As Mr. Alfred, Mr. O'Neill had mentioned earlier, Matunic is a different type of village entirely. But again, the planning department did do their village study. There are a different set of recommendations for that village. And the Commons is, again, different. It's mostly private property, but the town's got great plans to get a bike path spur connected up to the back end of that facility. So I think the subset of exposure, if you will, if you open up the gates, it's pretty low. I don't know of any other place in town that has those decorative poles, so I'm pretty sure that this is it. And I can tell you, I'd be happy to go to any other villages and talk to them about dealing with National Grid and Verizon to try to get permission to put banners on those telephone poles. It's impossible. I got that from Mr. Schock directly, but I tried through my venues to try to also get them to concur, and it didn't happen. So about a year and a half later, here we are with a viable option.
And that may be your answer, Ken, that they can't be hung in other villages because you have the decorative poles. I mean, if Grid is saying no on Main Street, they may say no on Matunic.
Yeah, it's, you know, unless there's a large DOT-sponsored project that rolls through there and there's an opportunity to redesign all of the utilities, and again, that happens once every 50 years, so.
My concerns on this are, I just don't know that it's up to the town to market this. It concerns me that the Village Association will have no financial input. They'll have, you know, they're just putting it on the town, and this doesn't support all businesses or all villages. It's a very, very small section, so it's very exclusionary. And I don't know that that's a position the town wants to get into, is giving monies to one organization where we then are in some way possibly showing favoritism over others. The decorative banners we haven't seen. I'm not hearing exactly where they'd be. I know that's loose, but it seems like a very small section, and I just don't know that it's the town's responsibility to do the marketing for that strip.
To speak to Meg's point about other villages coming forward and wanting banners and for the town's support for it, this is kind of a unique opportunity with this grant. And I see that it is due on February 5th. So as far as we know, nobody else from any of the other villages has come forward asking for the $5,000 match or any whatever they decided. So as far as this particular grant's concerned, 70% of it will be, of the cost of this project will be funded by that grant, correct?
That's correct.
And that's why you're here now asking for it?
Is it anticipated that this is a one-time only grant opportunity? Is it going to be offered again?
It's supposed to be offered on a rolling basis, but honestly, we're not sure the magnitude of the other applications. So I think it was fortuitous that we had a project that was small enough and well-defined enough to put ready. And again, the name of the grant is the Main Street Grant application. So we felt pretty confident with the businesses along Main Street to put the grant application together. I don't think we're competing with anyone.
It is true, though, that once they're put up, they do become the town's responsibility, so we would be responsible for maintenance and liable if there were any issues with them?
Not necessarily. It's a good point, though. I'm glad you raised that, because the Wakefield Village Association does take direct responsibility in terms of the lights. So the town as a whole, certainly those that don't work or live in and around Main Street do get the benefit of knowing that, you know, the Main Street is lit up. So WVA is going to continue that maintenance. They do have their own insurance. So this would be in addition to some of the work they already do for the preponderance of the town or visitors and folks that come and spend money in our town to help offset our taxes.
Do you know of any maintenance costs that are associated with the banners? I know Narragansett has banners, and I wasn't sure if you'd looked to them as a model to see what they spent and how they maintain them.
I haven't looked at it. Generally speaking, we're talking about the brackets and then the banners themselves. So we do have pricing for those. At this point, we're not asking the town for any additional costs on an ongoing basis. The big thrust, honestly, is getting the design completed, as Mr. Alfred had pointed out earlier. Got to verify that the banners are appropriate for the facilities that we're looking at. And then I'm sure over time what's going to happen is you're going to have the village start to comment on changing out banners, and that would probably be at their expense.
Any other questions for Mr. Burke?
I'll make a motion to endorse a grant proposal from the Wakefield Village Association for banners along Main Street with a letter of support for the project and a letter of commitment of $5,000 as the Wakefield Village Association 30% match for the grant and to act as a fiduciary agent for the grant.
Second.
So moved. Any discussion?
Just one comment. I would want to have town review, overall review and approval on the size of the banners, as well as to provide the council with the opportunity to sign off on the design.
Oh, I'll add that to my motion.
Second.
Well, I appreciate that amendment to the motion because personally, I think Main Street has a great sense of place the way it is. I don't know that I can envision it being improved by banners necessarily. Having driven through many communities with these banners, they just sort of distract from the rest of the place. But I think that amendment makes it much more palatable to me.
One more clarification, just to make sure that we're all speaking the same language here. It's got to be over the sidewalk, it can't be over the street as far as the yard arm is concerned. The one thing that wasn't mentioned is the fact that in addition to the banners, there is a piece of equipment that's also proposed for acquisition, which is a bike repair station. It would be located, we would provide for a location at the restrooms on Main Street, off of the bike path. That's a $2,000 component of that $17,000 grant. It hadn't been put on the record, I think it should, but I just think it's important that those three items be considered, Joe. If you add the over the sidewalk, it would be helpful.
I'll add those two additions to my motion.
Seconded with the amendments.
I'm concerned with all the needs we have in town. It maybe not seem like a lot, $5,000, but with all the concerns going on, decorative banners, I just think you're opening up a door for every other community to, want a similar thing. We've been discussing the snow removal equipment, snow removal. That's all safety and public help, where, providing a service. The decorative banners I don't see as providing a service, and like Abel says, they may even be distracting to some people, so we don't even know that everybody would want them. I also am concerned with it's not really benefiting everyone in the community, certainly not all businesses. It's a very small section, so I have big concerns.
I also have concerns and questions because we just got this as part of the package, but there's no clearly delineated, if you will, presentations in terms of what it's going to look like, how it will affect the businesses, what the impact will be on the business, really how will it be utilized, and, you know, how often will it be changed out? And, you know, down the road, it's wonderful to say that there's a certain segment that might take care of this, but what if that stops? Then it becomes a recurring town expense. And, you know, I'm all about Wakefield. I love Wakefield. I live in Wakefield, but I also have to think about the taxpayers in another regard too, and I'm not sure it's the best fit. That's just my own personal opinion, but I do want to promote small business, and that's important too.
Right. Any other comments? All right, all in favor of the motion as stated by Mr. Veely, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
By vote of 3 to 2, the motion carries.
You didn't say aye.
Oh, I did say aye. Yeah.
Okay.
Could I ask that the council, based on the vote that just occurred there, also authorize that the funding would come from the general fund, account 101-70109 contingency for transfer to the Main Street appropriation, so that we'll show where the money's going from and to where it's going.
That's my motion.
I think we need a second.
Oh, second.
I will accept it if you say the numbers I gave you.
Not happening.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries unanimously. Item D under communications is a resolution dated January 19th, 2016 from the Narragansett Town Council requesting support in opposition to Governor Raimondo's proposed truck toll gantries to be placed throughout the state of Rhode Island. It's been received and placed on file. What are we going to do with it?
I think during the work session, we discussed this, and we talked about perhaps continuing this to the next meeting to get some public input and to see how the residents feel about the tolling project before we decide to present any resolutions with a stance on it.
Indeed. So do I hear or any further discussion on this?
I make a motion that we continue item D on the agenda, the communication from the Narragansett Town Council, to the next meetings to give the public a chance to offer their input. To place it on the agenda, to make it an agenda item.
And I think at that point, I'd like to add, if there would be any relevance to having anybody come who is supporting the town of South Kingstown on a state level, that they could come in and add anything to this which might be going on, so that we could be more informed.
Does that make sense to you guys there?
I'm just trying to think, are you asking us just to post it on the agenda, or are you asking us to place public notice in the paper that the council would be considering a review of this issue?
I thought
We can post it however you'd like, but I can honestly tell you, I'm not going to be one that's going to be making a decision until I have more information.
And as I've said to you, all I'm trying to do is to understand what we need to do administratively for you. If you want to continue it with us posting on the agenda, I'm sure the newspaper will have reference to the fact that the council is going to deliberate on this matter at the first meeting in February. If that's sufficient for what your needs are this evening, that's how Dale and I will handle it.
Yeah, I think having it on the agenda is what I was implying with, as far as not posting in the newspaper.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Second.
So this is a motion not to advertise it. Is that correct?
Correct, to just
Just to
place it
place
on
it
the
on the
agenda to
agenda.
continue it to.
Okay,
post
just to
February
continue
meeting.
it to the next agenda. I mean, I think that makes sense because honestly, we don't know if the details of this plan are going to be out by the next.
We're most likely not going to know the details of this until late June,
The final details, yes, I
if
agree.
things go the way they normally do.
All right, well, the motion is to continue. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. Item 9 on our agenda tonight is, as always, comments from interested citizens. You know, this is your opportunity out there in the public to come up and tell us how we can be doing our jobs better, or, you know, whatever you feel like saying, really. Just come up to the podium and state your name for the record. You know, we've already had a lot of opportunity for public comment. So, any comments from council members?
Just wanted to say what a great job our Public Works team did on clearing the snow after this weekend. We kind of talked about how it was like the perfect storm, light snow on the weekend. A lot of people weren't out, but they really went above and beyond. I was so impressed on Sunday morning driving around and seeing how clear the roads were. They just did a fantastic job, so kudos to them.
It was the one storm I did receive a message. Usually I get messages that the plow isn't by people's house fast enough or, you know, often enough. This time I did get a message from someone just saying what a great job everyone did and how thankful they were. It was really well done. I think it's important to note when these storms happen that staying off the roads adds to, you know, how well these guys can do their jobs. Everyone likes to go out driving around in the snowstorm, but that sets everybody back. So I think hopefully everybody stayed in Saturday, and that helped make it a speedy process.
Oh, and that just reminded me, I went up and down Winter Street looking for any fire hydrants that were there to dig them out. I know we don't have an ordinance, or like some towns do, about clearing around your fire hydrants, but if anybody does have a fire hydrant on their street or near their property, it's a really good idea to shovel out about 3 feet around it so that, God forbid, there was ever an emergency, the fire department could access the fire hydrant and get the water out as quickly as possible. Because, as we know, if your house is on fire, seconds count. So if everybody took the time to make sure that was done, I'm sure our firefighters would really appreciate that.
Yeah, I'd like to just echo what's been said already. A great job by the Public Services Department. I think a couple other things I wanted to note. I think February 4th, we're going to have a work session to discuss charter review. So I hope people will come out to that meeting and give us some input on what we might want to change or keep the same. Also, February 15th, maybe the town manager was going to mention this, but that's the deadline for the Solarize program that we'll have a resolution in support of later on in the agenda. So just want people to be aware of that. And that's all I've got. Any other comments? All right, Steve, what's going on?
You folks have stolen all of my thunder because I just wanted to say that, you know, the public services, all of those men and women that work during those emergencies take great pride in what they do. And it's greatly appreciated to hear good comments like that. So on behalf of the staff, I really thank you for saying it publicly. And we are proud of what they're able to do. But a lot of it is the equipment that you're also voting on a year-to-year basis for us to be able to stay ahead of it. The infrastructure is important, the equipment's important, as well as the people that, the quality people that we have working for us. And Solarize, I was going to mention that, so you took that too. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over to the solicitor.
I don't know if there were questions, I'm all set.
Very good. All right. Item 12 on the agenda is appointments.
I'll make an appointment to, a motion to appoint Richard Pike to the Veterans Memorial Commission for a term to expire January of 2020.
I second that.
So moved. Any discussion?
I'd like to thank him for stepping up to be on this commission. I think it's very important, and I'm happy to have him help these guys out. I know they've worked very hard. Steve Stewart's here, and I'd like to say thank you for all the work you've been doing. It's greatly appreciated. So hopefully Richard will be able to help you.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And that motion carries unanimously. And brings us to new business, item 13. And the first item under new business is a resolution endorsing Solarize Rhode Island. And it reads as follows. Whereas the town of South Kingstown is a community that encourages energy-saving measures and sustainable sources of energy, such as solar photovoltaic projects, and whereas the Rhode Island Office of Energy Resources, in conjunction with Rhode Island Commerce Corporation and Smart Power, Inc., is administrating the Solarize Rhode Island program to promote small-scale solar installations in participating municipalities. And whereas the town of South Kingstown is a participant community in the Solarize Rhode Island program, and whereas the town council recognizes that Solarize Rhode Island will provide opportunities to aggregate multiple small-scale solar PV installations and realize sustainable energy cost savings for South Kingstown residents and business owners, now therefore, we, the town council of the town of South Kingstown, do hereby acknowledge the successful early program steps experienced by the community and commit to creating further awareness of the program and its goals of accessible and affordable energy options. And Steve, before we vote on this, could you give us a little recap of the success that we've seen?
So far, there's been 4 different meetings that have been held here. We're seeing a great deal of community interest. There's been 15 contracts that have been signed to date. Over 75 kilowatts are committed within those 15 contracts. The way the Solarize has been set up is that the cost of installation is discounted based on the amount of kilowatt hours that are actually being purchased. Tier 1 was a installation cost of $3.65 per watt. That's down to $3.57 on Tier 2. Tier 2, we've already reached. So what we're looking at is that if we can get the amount of kilowatts over 151, we'd be able to get that price down again, down to $3.50. That's just on the installation cost, but every bit is going to help as far as making these systems more cost efficient. I think that before we're done, there'll be additional contracts over the 15 that we have. I also think that there may be a round 2 or a round 3 if necessary, if the interest is there and the applications have been going through proper process. So I think it's only positive at this point, and as long as we have people that are interested in it, we're going to continue to work with Soul Power, who's the consultant of record for South Kingstown, to move forward. And hopefully we'll see other towns join in this effort to provide the availability of these programs on a statewide basis.
Great. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion that we approve item number 13 under new business for Solarize Rhode Island as stated.
Second.
So moved. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. 13B is a resolution authorizing an award of bid to Aalborg Construction Company, or Corporation, 21 College Hill Road of Warwick, for construction of a community recreation center in accordance with all bidding specifications in an amount not to exceed $6,015,000, including a contingency of $310,629, and is further described in a memorandum from the Director of Leisure Services to the Town Manager dated January 20th.
The memorandum that Terry prepared for you documents that the conceptual design is of a 29,000 square foot recreation facility. It will include multi-court gymnasium for sports and athletic programming, 2 multi-use rooms for existing exercise classes and for meeting space. It'll also provide a walking track around the perimeter of the court area, a reception area and office space for oversight of the the facility. There'll also be locker rooms, laboratories, to accommodate public as well as the school athletic team requirements, general storage area, and a parking lot that will accommodate 126 spaces. The initial contract goes back to 2014, when a $387,000 contract was awarded for the initial design and the development of construction documents and construction. That work was completed, and this project was put out to bid, and it was advertised in the October 15th issue of the Independent. Bids were received in November. On November 13th, we received the bids. There were 8 bids that were received. The lowest base bid was from Allberg Construction Corp. At $5,935,000. This is without contingency. The second lowest bidder was with E.W. Berman at $6,092,000. And the third lowest bidder was at ADS Construction at $6.95. We offered, based on the prices being in excess of the funding available, we offered the 3 the opportunity to continue negotiations, the 3 lowest qualified bidders, in an attempt to reduce the cost of the project, yet not to lose some of the core requirements of the facility that were necessary to meet what the planned needs were for this facility. Initially, both Allberg and Berman responded to the value engineering and development of alternatives. Once we received written quotes from both of those corporations, it was clear that Allberg was the lowest qualified bidder, and we began to negotiate directly with them. As I noted, Allberg's initial price was $9,535,000. We then looked at one alternate that we accepted. We looked at several supplemental deducts that were prepared by our architect, and we then looked at requesting value engineering from both Allberg and from Berman. When we got done, we agreed it was certainly a number more than what we're showing here on page 3 of the recommendation to you, but the additional value engineering recommendations amounted to another $125,629. That provided us with an opportunity to reduce the base bid by $230,629. It then brought us down to a revised bid of $5,704,371. We then adjusted the contingency value to come up with a bid price of the $6,615,000. On page 4 of the document, we show what the cost of the project will be. We certainly have talked about each of the bond issues. We've talked about the fact that back in June of 2015, the council forwarded the first $1 million from fund balance. What we're looking at is to balance this project, total cost would be $6.6 million. It will require an additional $250,000 in rec fees from what we had originally intended at the $1 million level last year, and an additional $200,000 to be appropriated and transferred from the general fund's unassigned fund balance. I would note for the record that the undesignated fund balance as of June 30th of 2015 amounted to approximately 13, I think it was 13.5%. 13.15%. or $9,956,787. The use of that $200,000 will not have any direct impact on that fund balance or the investments that we currently hold those dollars in. We're forecasting that with the close of June 30th, 2016, recognizing that $200,000 as well as the money that would be needed for the 2016-17 budget from fund balance, we'd still be maintaining over a 13% fund balance. Our objective in terms of maintaining fund balance, unassigned fund balance, is really in an area of between 10 and 16.5%. So we're at the midpoint of where we feel that it certainly is appropriate. There is currently over $1.44 million available in recreation impact fees, of which could be committed to this project. We're looking at the $1.25 million specifically because we've got other projects that are recreation related that within the capital budget that's been adopted this evening would need use of those impact fees. So the project before you this evening would be the award at the $6.6 million, which is inclusive of the $310,000 contingency amount. We reduced the contingency from about $410,000 down to the $310,000 level based on the fact that we looked at the bid. Major cost of this project is the metal building that will house the restrooms, the locker rooms, and the gym floor. We know exactly what those prices are. So we feel that a good portion of the project can be reduced in terms of the percentage that we need for contingency dollars. Like any project, if we run into unanticipated needs or problems, we're going to have to use that contingency. I never guarantee that we're going to bring any project in at any price. What I'm saying to you is that this is the project, what we see based on the contract that we have in place today. We feel that there's an appropriate contingency available for it. We feel that the funds are available within the undesignated, unassigned fund balance, and the funds are certainly available within the impact fee reserve fund. When we talk about capital budget and impact fees, they can only be used for new construction or expanded recreational use. So I think that this is an appropriate use of the funds and a proper allocation at the $6.6 million project. I'd be glad to answer any additional questions council may have in advance of taking action on the resolution before you.
I had a question. I was looking at the list for the things that you deducted to the value engineering. Are these things like the movable bleachers and the gym divider, are those things that we're going to see maybe next year as a request in the budget for these items, or are these items that you think that you won't need at all?
I'd love to have the movable bleachers in the project. I think that if we have an opportunity and the contingency isn't spent, probably bring some of those items back to you. Do I think that the Friends groups may want to come up with the portable bleachers at a later time? Yes. I think that once you move into a new building, there's going to be additional needs that you're going to see, whether they come through the town or through the organized sport activities that will occur there, is going to be a decision, a policy decision at the council level.
Is there a Friends group right now for the recreation center that you know of?
There's a Friends of the Recreation Department that the town operates with. Not specifically for this facility. There's also a Friends for the dog park.
Right.
So there's a number of different advocacy groups for any number of things in town.
What kind of seating will be available in the rec center? What kind of seating is going to be available for games?
Seating? What's the planned seating?
There's going to be a bleacher system, automated bleacher system that seats 500 up to a capacity of
500 people? Okay.
Steve, I have a question on the supplements and value engineering recommendations. We've had, at many public meetings, people question that we make sure that we don't nickel and dime this project. Are any of these compromising the
No, and
finished product?
there were several that came forward that were large money items that we said no to. You know, some of the changes that are here, I think, are, you know, it's like the light fixtures. I think that what Wahlberg has is a vendor that if we buy everything through them, so it's going through one contractor, there's a better discounting that's available to him, so that's where you can do those types of things. Why we had 6 inches of loom rather than 4 inches of loom. You know, some of the flush valves on the toilets, we could have gone either way on those. So no, one of the main things that I wanted to make sure was that we weren't going to compromise anything that we thought was necessary. The other thing, if there were things that we could put off till the end of the project to see if there were contingency dollars there, we would come back on. But at this point, I think all of these things here are things that could have been in the initial bids when they did the first workup. His responsibility, the architect's responsibility, was to do a cost takeoff in advance of the bidding, and that one came in at around $5.4 million, where we had the 5.1, and we said at that point, well, we'll see where we go, and then to make the adjustments from there. I think that some of these items, I mean, changing, you know, birch doors from cherry, certainly the durability for marking may go up a bit, but I also think when we look at the way our buildings are maintained, I don't see that as an issue. So I would say to you, I hate losing some of the items, but I think that none of them take away from what the core values are of the building.
Thank you.
I mean, we had a decision with, you know, it was Terry, myself, Josh as an engineer, and Trish looked at each of those different items, and the 4 of us had to agree to be willing to take it out. So I'm comfortable with it. Certainly, I wish we didn't have any deducts necessary, but I think they're appropriate.
Any other questions for Steve? Great. So to do this, we need to pass 4 resolutions, as I read.
Correct. The first resolution would be the award of the construction contract. The second award would be for us setting up an operations special revenue fund, because what we plan on doing is maintaining a community recreation center fund where we will appropriate the necessary tax dollars will go to that, as well as the revenues that are generated from the facility itself. That way, there'll be full transparency to see what the cost of operating that facility is and what the property tax impact is from year to year. The only thing that the Community Rec Center Fund won't do is to fund the debt, because the debt is part of the municipal debt, and that would be through the debt service fund that you agreed to set up last June. We'll have a fund in, as a for instance, in development of the 2016-17 operating budget, we will have to set up that, you'll set up the fund tonight, we'll then seek appropriation dollars, because technically this facility should open up in January, February time period of next year. So we would be operating that in the 16-17 year, so we would need dollars for that. Then the following year, it would be a budget that would be adopted specifically for the 17-18 year. So we're going to first award a contract, if that's what the council wishes. Second, set up a operations fund. And then third, we're going to have 2 resolutions. One, providing the additional $200,000 from unassigned fund balance, and the second, transferring all of the $1.25 million. It's not as if those are all new dollars. There had been a placeholder for that first $1 million. So yes, there'll be 4. You could take them as a block, or you could take them individually.
All right, you foresaw my next question. So I would entertain a motion to bundle these 4 resolutions.
I make a motion to approve on page 4, item 13, B, C, D, and E, as continued to page 5, as presented by our town manager, Steve Alford.
Second.
So moved. Further discussion? No, seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I'm not dead yet, no.
By a vote of 4 to 1, the motion carries. Where does that bring us? And look at that. I believe that brings us to the end of the agenda. Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
So moved. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No.
Opposed? By a vote of 4 to 1, the motion carries.